Harumi is a nerd of Taku, who would do anything for his crush, but couldn't meet her because he was ugly. However, his wish comes true when he dies and is reborn as her dog. But he discovers that she is not innocent, and is a freaky psycho who would turn his life into a living hell.
So, shall we sleep together?
What?
It all starts the day he is reading a book by his favorite author, Akiyama Shinobu, in a cafe, and while he flips through the pages, he thinks about the final volume titled Lust, which is yet to be released. He tells himself that he can't die without reading it, but little does he know the tragedy that awaits him. He suddenly realizes that his wallet is missing, and as he searches for it, he notices a robbery going on in the same cafe. While he wonders what is about to happen, the ugly-looking robber suddenly points the gun at him and tells him and the other person behind him to stand up. This is when Harumi realizes that someone had been there all along. He sees the girl engrossed in writing, unaware of her surroundings, but the robber finds this insulting and approaches her with his gun pointed at her. He almost shoots her, but Harumi, thinking he is Batman, quickly grabs the gun and starts struggling with the robber. However, the dude pushes him to the ground before blasting his brain with the rifle, shocking Harumi, who thought he had plot armor. Meanwhile, the girl doesn't even realize what has happened and continues writing with all her attention. Harumi enters the soul realm immediately and wonders if he is now dead. Bro starts to think of his family, the chicks he has yet to clap, and even the books he has yet to read. The book lust suddenly appears before him, and he stretches his hand to reach it, but it suddenly turns into a dog, and his soul gets sucked into it. He wakes up back in the Earth realm, and sees this ugly-looking mofo in an afro who comes to say hello, happy that he is awake. Meanwhile, Harumi, who has yet to realize the mystery that has just happened to him, becomes excited that he is alive, but he wonders why the afro guy keeps calling him a dog. Suddenly, he sees a mirror just in front of him, and notices a dog there. He wonders what the heck is going on here, and becomes terrified when he realizes that his miserable life has been reduced to a mere dog. Later, he discovers that the Afro dude had found him in the rain and brought him to the pet shop. Harumi is sad that he was reborn as a dog, but feels more terrible because he has not read a book in a week. He starts craving books and even desires if someone just types something so he can read. As he begins to call the name of his favorite author, the lady from the cafe the previous day suddenly enters the store. She approaches the dog and asks if it is him, shocking Harumi, and he wonders what she is talking about. While he remains speechless, she asks the Afro guy how much the dog is, but he tells her he is not selling it. So she suddenly brings out a pair of scissors and skillfully cuts down the dog's cage in 2 seconds, terrifying the store owner. Following that, the strange girl has now bought the dog, so she ties him up and threatens to isekai him. But Harumi keeps barking in fear. She cautions him not to open his mouth when he is talking, making him wonder how he is supposed to do that. However, he suddenly realizes she can hear his thoughts, dropping his jaws. He starts to beg for his life, since he has abused her in his mind before and asks her how this is even possible. She then reveals that his voice has been ringing in her head for the past few days, and when she followed the voice, she ended up at the pet shop. She asks him if he is the one ringing in her head, but Harumi asks her who she really is. She introduces herself as Natsuno. She is 20 and has got medium-sized melons. She resumes threatening him, and he becomes depressed at his useless life, saying it was first a situation with a robber, and now an upcoming Karen with scissors. Hearing this, she becomes surprised and asks what he means by that. At the same time, Harumi notices the color of her eyes and instantly discovers it is the same girl from the day he died. Also, realizing it's the dude who died on her behalf, Natsuno's mood changes and she leaves immediately. The next day, she returns in sus clothes and asks him if he would like to smash or pass, but he replies that he is more interested in plot-filled books than 3D girls. He further comments that it's not like she is 3D anyway, since she is as flat as a surfboard, annoying her, and she tries to cut him in pieces again. However, she suddenly says he can stay here for a while since he has nowhere to go, surprising Harumi, who is shocked that she believes his story about reincarnating as a dog. She then asks him what he wants, and he replies, books. She then takes him to her library, which is filled with different books, making a little dog happy. As he walks through the library, he notices she has all of Akiyama Shinobu's books and commends them, but she tells him she just called her name, shocking him. She further reveals that he was calling her name when he was in the pet shop, but he replies that he just got to know her name when she introduced herself. However, she tells him she is referring to the one he just mentioned, shocking him. While he doubts what she is saying, she tells him that Natsuno is her real name, but Akiyama Shinobu is her pen name, leaving him speechless. Shocked that he has finally met his favorite author, he tells her to get to writing the final volume of Lust immediately. This is how Harumi starts living with his favorite author, and seeing how she lives her life. Meanwhile, one day, while Bro watches the TV, he sees the news about his death and the culprit behind it. Then, he suddenly realizes that he left his wallet, which contained his bookseller's point card at home, making him sad because he had racked up a lot of points on him. Natsuno notices this, and later that night, she makes a call to inquire about the victim's wallet and his house address. The next day, while they have breakfast, she suddenly tells him they are heading out to settle a score, surprising him. Afterward, they head out, and on their way, Harumi catches a nice view of Natsuno's plot in 4K, thanks to his height and position, but he immediately becomes embarrassed. Natsuno calls him a cultured little dog, but dude blames it on the fact that he is not yet used to this body and says he is only interested in text anyway. They soon meet the Afro guy and see Natsuno. Ro gets traumatized again as she tells him she hates Afro because they are difficult to cut. They continue walking, and a yellow-haired buffoon with a group of men in black starts, rendering a useless performance, trying to gain Natsuno's attention, but Natsuno snubs her stupid face. Then a baldy comes to take her away forcefully. Meanwhile, Harumi finds the face familiar but doesn't remember where he saw her. They soon reach Harumi's former apartment, and while Natsuno heads toward room 1202, as was stated in the news, Harumi reveals that his room is actually room 1201. He explains the situation around it, but Natsuno insists they head to room 1202 anyway. Harumi tells her they don't have the key, but she suddenly brings out a bunch of keys, shocking him as to why she has that, and she tells him that she has influence. Her sister is a policewoman. Entering the room, Harumi suddenly sees a newspaper on the floor and wonders why it is there since it was just published the day before. Then, Natsuno reveals that the man who shot is still hiding somewhere. She further explains that after the man Issa caught him, he found his wallet, which contained a key and his IDs, and since he didn't have anywhere to go, he must have come to his apartment. However, upon trying the key, he must have realized that the key actually belonged to room 1201, which no one else knew about. It just found a perfect hiding place where the police and Harumi's family never checked. Harumi is shocked at the realization, and at that moment, they suddenly hear a noise from outside. They head out immediately only to find the culprit trying to escape. They chase after him immediately, and after running for a while, he suddenly stops and faces them. Seeing his face, Harumi notices something has changed about him. However, the culprit states that he can't be caught yet and suddenly attacks Natsuno, landing her a punch, which knocks her to the ground. At that moment, they observe one of Akiyama Shinobu's books in his hand. He brings out another one, and Harumi assumes that he must be using these and the others in his pocket to defend himself. However, the dude suddenly declares that he can't be caught yet until he is done reading all of these, immediately making Harumi realize that he started reading Akiyama Shinobu's books during the period he was in the room, and the books changed him. Natsuno is amused that she's also got a criminal reading her book, but she approaches him, and they start fighting. Meanwhile, Harumi is shocked by the criminal's fighting technique, because it is the same as in Akiyama Shinobu's books. After a series of exchanges between the two fighters, with Natsuno also fighting like a pro, because she is a martial arts expert, she manages to cut out the books from his hands and pockets, almost making the man mad. She finally knocks him out on the bridge's rail guard and suggests that Harumi just needs to push in a little, and the culprit will be dead, which would be no sin since a dog did it. Harumi wonders what the heck she is talking about, and Natsuno asks him if he doesn't want to get revenge since he must hate him. She tells him to unalive him, and after a moment of silence, Harumi walks over to the guy and pulls him back to the bridge, shocking Natsuno. She asks him why he did this, and he replies that the culprit now loves books too. She doesn't seem to understand since this is an opportunity to get revenge on the man who isekai'd him, but Harumi replies that the deed has been done anyway. She calls him a liar, but Harumi tells her to read his mind and find out, shocking her. He adds that, after all, he is alive, and getting revenge won't turn him back into a human. He then says the only thing he can isekai anyone for right now is reading. Hearing this, Natsuno tells him that the person he saved will unalive the man who executed him, prompting Harumi to ask why she would even do that. She reveals that he died because he was trying to save her, and this is why she should avenge him. Harumi instantly realizes that she is doing this because she is blaming herself for his death. And while he tries to talk her out of it, Natsuno doesn't listen, calling it her fault that he is dead. He gets angry and knocks her to the ground, since she won't hear him before explaining that he did what he wanted to do, and it is no one's fault. He tells her he is sure she would have been the same, but she replies that he doesn't know a bit about her. However, he tells her he knows she would do the same since he has seen it in her books. She writes like her life depends on it, and he also reads them like his life depends on it. Sober thoughts now live inside of him. He tells her not to cry anymore, but it is at that moment she raises her crying pitch higher. Later on their way home, Natsuno starts feeling wisdom and offers to cut his chest open to see if she will understand how she is feeling, saying sometimes, the more you like someone, the more you want to torment them. Girl thinks that is similar to what a creepy psychopathic commenter would type on Reddit. Natsuno then mentions that she might continue her new book, and hearing her say book, Harumi suddenly remembers that they didn't lock his library. He says they head there immediately because those books are practically his children. Hearing children, Natsuno enters the delusion of how it'd be to make babies with him. But she gets angry when he calls her a carpenter's dream to get her attention. The next day, Harumi wakes up from a terrible dream of Natsuno, threatening to cut off his pickle, since he seemed to be flirting with another girl right after they talked about having children. He is surprised he is dreaming about her and reasons that he really needs to fear her. But he wonders how the girl he saw in the dream Madoko is doing. He steps out to the living room and finds a girl lying on the table. He calls her for a moment, and when she doesn't wake up, he moves closer to see if she isn't dead or something. But what he finds instead is shocking. The strange lady starts acting like she just escaped from the cuckoo's nest. Harumi reasons that things might get bloody if Natsuno appears and sees her like this, but he is shocked when Natsuno arrives and calmly tells her to sit. After sitting, Natsuno shows him the lady's ID, and he is really shocked when he realizes that this creepy moron is the infamous Akiyama Shinobu's editor, named Suzuna. However, he is thrilled to witness the meeting between an author and an editor, which he has never gotten the opportunity to see before. Meanwhile, as the meeting goes on, Suzuna comments that the work Natsuno just submitted is trash, shocking Harumi, and Natsuno replies that she has been in a slump. Suzuna suggests she tries a change of pace, maybe going on a vacation or changing her appearance, but Natsuno replies that this is too much stress. So Suzuna suggests she gets some melon implants, then, since anyone who sees her would think she is a man. Suzuna even destroys her further by pressing her cannons on the table and saying she would have shared some of hers if she could, making Harumi fear for her, because he knows what doing that may cause. Natsuno gets angry and immediately uses her scissors to cut a part of Suzuna's collar. While Harumi reasons that she shouldn't use her scissors on a real human, the creepy editor thanks Natsuno for cutting her, because it makes her feel more alive, shocking Harumi. Natsuno comments that only Suzuna and her dog enjoyed her cutting, but Harumi quickly protests that he doesn't. Just then, Suzuna accuses Natsuno of not informing her before she got a dog, prompting Natsuno to ask why she'd need her permission. Suzuna then says Natsuno is cheating on her with another dog when she already has one. She further says that she is sure the dog enjoys being cut and expresses her desire to be cut like that at least once a week. Harumi wonders who the heck this mofo is. Suzuna finally tells Natsuno to take her time to write, since she still has enough time in her schedule. Just then, Harumi thinks about the slump Natsuno claims she was in and realizes how true it is. He also realizes that she is always in the flow after an incident, and he tells her what he has observed. But she suddenly asks him if they should create a dog murder case immediately to get her back in that state, making Bro realize that his life is not safe. Suzuna soon stands up to leave, but before she leaves, she informs Natsuno about the recent slasher incidents in the area and tells her to be careful, surprising her. Later, when Harumi reads the newspaper about the slasher incidents, he asks Natsuno since when has she been in her supposed slump. She tells him it's been since August, which Harumi remembers as the month when the Kathig incident happened. While he tries to connect the dots, she suddenly tells him that now that she thinks of it, she has been in the slump since he arrived, which Harumi takes as a plausible excuse. However, as he tries to defend that her slump state might be due to some other reasons, she cuts a part of his skin for Sue. Some days later, Suzuna visits again to ask if Natsuno is now writing, but she tells her she has yet to. So Suzuna suggests she read some magazines for a change of pace. She then brings out a magazine containing a report of the slasher incident, and upon reading it, Harumi discovers that all the victims were stand while walking at night. Natsuno suggests that Suzume use herself as bait to draw out and capture the slasher, promising to reward her with abuse. The maniac becomes excited because her love language is abuse, and she assures Natsuno that this will be solved immediately before dashing out of the room. Afterward, Natsuno notices that Harumi is worried about this and immediately asks them to go find the slasher themselves. They enter a bookstore to inquire about the incident, and the receptionist tells them about the rumor of a girl who chased off the suspect with a book of Akiyama Shinobu she had. Just then, another man reveals the next victim is said to have been attacked after buying Akiyama Shinobu's book. Later on their way, they meet a broke man to fire, who says that his colleague was assaulted on his way home from reading in a cafe. He was also reading an Akiyama Shinobu book. Following that, Natsuno and Harumi continue walking, and they meet the yellow-haired creep again, but this time, she is performing Shine Bright Like a Diamond. However, Natsuno ignores her again, prompting Harumi to ask if she knows her. The yellow-haired keeps appearing before them to gain Natsuno's attention, and seeing her again, Harumi suddenly realizes that it's the famous idol Maxi, who is also a best-selling author. He glazes her for a moment, and Natsuno reveals that Maxi has been following her lately, making her wonder how she knows her true identity. Maxi brags that she wanted to see how another author like her would shine, but it turns out that Natsuno is rather black. Meanwhile, Natsuno ignores her and keeps going, but Maxi says that it means she must be scared of her, catching her attention because she won't let some idiot flex on her. She turns around with her scissors and promises to cut her golden hair so her head can shine even brighter. Maxi also makes her threats, saying that she will deflate her balloons to make her even flatter. However, before this can escalate into a full-blown fight, one of her guards comes to carry her away again forcefully. In the next scene, while Harumi and Natsuno try to figure out what might be going on with the slasher incidents, they suddenly hear that another incident has happened. Getting to the scene, they realize that the new victim is the Afro guide. Natsuno suddenly sees the suspect and chases after him immediately. Meanwhile, Harumi the idiot senses a book in an isolated space and follows it, only to find one of Akiyama's books in a shady place. He decides to read till Natsuno returns, and as he walks closer, he gets captured immediately, only to wake up later in room 1202 and discover it was all planned by none other than Madoka. Meanwhile, Natsuno continues to chase after the suspect but soon loses him. However, she sees one of her books drop from him. In room 1202, Madoka starts referring to Harumi as a brother, surprising Harumi, who then reasons that she can hear him. He begins to talk with her, relieved that someone else other than that psycho can hear him, and she coincidentally answers them correctly, only for him to ask about their parents, and she gets a different answer. She keeps telling him how they live together from now until forever. Harumi decides to ask her the name of their family cat to be sure she really can't hear him, and he becomes disappointed when she talks about his favorite curry stew. He wonders how she then knows that he is Harumi, and Madoka becomes sad as she talks about how she wanted him to move with them, which reminds Harumi of when she once begged him to. Madoka immediately starts acting creepy, stating that he is going nowhere from now on. She starts reciting some marriage vows BS, and Bro becomes terrified because his sister seems to have changed. Madoka soon brings a bowl of chili to eat and attempts to feed him, traumatizing him as he tries to reject the abomination she calls food. She suspects he is rejecting the food because she didn't garnish it with pickles the way he likes, and she immediately heads out to get some. While she is away, Harumi reasons that he has to escape before she is back, and as he struggles to free himself from the rope used to tie him, Natsuno appears by the window, looking like a starving vampire. He immediately realizes it is about to be the end of him. Natsuno takes him back to her base to tie him up and starts interrogating him about who he was talking to earlier. He reveals that Madoka is his sister, but Natsuno, doubting him, tells him to prove it, which makes him wonder how this Toofus wants him to prove that. She soon releases him, and later, believing that he is telling the truth, she asks him why his sister abducted him for 3 days then, leaving him speechless too. But he passes on that by asking her where she has been, and she replies that she was pursuing the suspects. However, Harumi is disappointed at how useless she is when she reveals that she could not catch him. Meanwhile, she tells him that she saw one of her books drop from him, surprising Harumi, who then reasons that her books might really have something to do with all of this. He suggests that someone might be bearing a grudge against her, and asks who she thinks it might be. She suddenly says she knows he is the culprit, but Du tells her to shut the F up and allow him to think everything through. He starts considering who the culprit might be and arrives at his sister. Connecting the dots of all Madoka has done, Natsuno asks him if he thinks his sister might be connected to the slasher incidents, but he disagrees because his sister will never do such a thing. However, Natsuno states that regardless of whether Madoka is related to the incidents or not, she will have to pay for the fact that she abducted her dog. But Harumi defends that Madoka didn't hurt anyone, to which Natsuno replies as she broke her heart. Harumi tells her to get some food. She might just be hungry. Meanwhile, Madoka becomes worried when she can't find Harumi again. The next day, Natsuno and Harumi head to room 1202 to look for Madoka, but they find out she is no longer there, so they continue their investigation by wandering around the city. Suzune suddenly appears and tells them about another incident involving the slasher. Hearing this, Natsuno rebukes her immediately, reminding her that her stupid face promised to prevent another occurrence. Natsuno and Harumi call her useless in different adjectives, but this only switches the idiom since her love language is being punished. Natsuno then asks her if she gathered some information at least, and the bozo replies that she figured that Natsuno's books are related to all the incidents. Natsuno tells her she already knows that and threatens to beat her up till she starts walking on 4 limbs. Suzune becomes excited immediately, and as she leaves, she tells Natsuno the rumor about the girl crying in the park as she cuts up one of her books, shocking Natsuno and Harumi, who already suspect who it might be. Natsuno asks for more details, and Suzune reveals that a small, short-haired girl was cutting up her book while muttering Akiyama Shinobu repeatedly, instantly confirming that it is Madoka. They head to the scene, and while they observe the shredded pieces on the ground, Madoka suddenly appears and demands to know who the heck Natsuno is. The two start to exchange insults, almost escalating into a fight, but Harumi quickly intercepts them, begging Natsuno not to cut his sister. She tells him that asking her may be the fastest way to solve the slasher case. However, he says if at all she will cut anything, she should cut Ispiko instead, which Natsuno sees as a brilliant idea. Just then, she decides to ask about the burnt book, surprising Madoka that there is still a remnant, because she thought she burned all Harumi's Akiyama Shinobu books for him. Hearing this, Natsuno uses a smoke bomb, and she escapes with Harumi. Returning home, Harumi tells Natsuno that his sister must be behind the slasher incidents, but Natsuno replies that they can't conclude, though there is a possibility she is. Harumi wonders why though, and Natsuno replies that perhaps Madoka doesn't want Akiyama Shinobu to take her brother away from her. Harumi still doesn't understand what she means, so Natsuno explains that it must have been that Harumi only talked about books when Madoka was with him, which must not have been very fun for her. This must have made her feel that Akiyama Shinobu was stealing him away from her. Meanwhile, Harumi thinks it is ridiculous to think that, but Natsuno tells him that with the right reasons, it may not have been unreasonable for her to think so. This prompts Harumi to ask what she means by that, to which she replies that his death must have made Madoka think he died because of his love for Akiyama Shinobu's books, which was why he stayed back in Tokyo anyway. Natsuno further says that this must have fueled her hatred for Akiyama Shinobu, and makes her think that destroying the one who took her brother from her could bring him back. Hearing all of this, Harumi, however, says that he still believes in Madoka, and if it eventually turns out that she is really the slasher, he will be the one to stop her. He then begs Natsuno to lend him his strength, to which she agrees. However, at that moment, Madoka suddenly breaks in through the window and captures Harumi. She tells him she already thought something like this would happen, so she put a tracker on him, shocking him. Meanwhile, Natsuno asks Madoka if she came near, knowing that it was Akiyama Shinobu's room, shocking her. Madoka instantly accuses her of stealing her brother away from her, but Natsuno replies that if she would come to her house, she should at least come in through the entrance like normal people do. Madoka blames her for causing it and making her brother crazy. She says she knew that there was no way he would die and leave reading books behind, so he had to come here in the form of a dog. However, Natsuno tells her to come out of her delulu and reaffirms that her brother is already dead. She adds that Madoka can hate or blame her all she wants, but it doesn't change what has happened, and she needs to face reality. She then asks if she thinks her actions make Harumi happy, but Madoka shuts her up, saying she doesn't know jack about her brother. Natsuno flips it on her too, asking if Madoka knows what her brother wants. She tells her that if she truly knows as she claims, she should know that her brother wouldn't approve of anything she is doing. Madoka asks how the heck she knows that, and Natsuno replies that she knows her readers because she passes her thoughts to them through her books. She clearly states that Harumi had died because he died in front of her while protecting her from a robber. She then adds that this is why she will continue writing for him and putting all her best into her books without forgetting his death. Natsuno finally declares that Harumi wouldn't approve of anything she'd has done, and being ashamed, Madoka carries the dog and yeets out of the room immediately. She takes him to an open field and starts feeling terrible, saying there is no way the dog is her brother. She explains that she thought she would be able to find Harumi in this city, which was why she came. She even set up a trap, and when the dog fell for it, she thought she had found him because only Harumi would have fallen for it. She then says she can't keep running like this, or will never be able to face him, so she must finish what she started. She soon realizes that Natsuno has arrived, and is surprised that she found them. Natsuno reveals that she put a tracker on the dog, shocking Harumi. Then, she asks Madoka if she is ready to fight. Madoka immediately replies that she is ready to fight with all she has and instantly summons her special weapon called Tuna Eater, shocking Harumi. Natsuno also unleashes her scissors, and after some yapping between the two, they begin the actual fight. After some exchanges, Madoka transforms her weapon into a chainsaw and starts felling all the trees around in a bid to split Natsuno into equal halves. She soon gets stuck to a tree, giving Natsuno an advantage, leading to her breaking the saw. Madoka feels terrible that all her efforts have amounted to nothing, but she suddenly becomes determined again, saying she must see this to the end. She unleashes a more powerful weapon and blasts Natsuno with a bazooka. However, Natsuno withstands the blast with her scissors, splitting it into two. Madoka is shocked and drops to her knees in shame. However, in a surprising turn of events, they both become friends and start to talk on their way back. During their conversation, Natsuno asks Madoka why she cut her books, and she replies it's because Harumi once told her it was better to tear books apart or burn them, since selling them to used bookstores cuts the author's royalties. Natsuno is surprised to hear this, and asks if it has anything to do with the slasher incidents. Madoka wonders what that is, shocking Natsuno and Harumi. Natsuno starts asking about the various incidents that have happened, but Madoka isn't aware of them, and she says the only thing she did was cut her books and abduct her dog. Hearing this, Harumi reasons that this only means one thing. Following that, he calls to the air, telling whoever is hiding to reveal themselves. Susanna suddenly appears, asking him how long he has known, and he replies he had suspected since when Natsuno attacked her in the city, and she said they were ganging up on her. Suzuma asks him how much he knows and pulls a 10 new version of Sherlock Holmes, explaining all the cues she had left while they investigated the slasher incidents. Susanna reveals that she did it for Natsuno, so she could escape from her slump as soon as possible. She further declares that she is willing to do anything for Natsuno to make her as effective in her writing as possible. But Harumi interrupts by saying that Natsuno to get out of her slump alone. Suzuna is skeptical about that, and Harumi tells her he believes in her since she also believes in her readers. Hearing this, Suzuna reinstates the fact that she would do anything to see Akiyama go down as one of the best writers in history. She adds that observing that Harumi has gotten pretty close to her enough to strike Natsuno's emotions. She wonders what kind of book Natsuno would write if he were to die, scaring Harumi. As she turns to leave, Harumi states that he will never accept her way of doing things, but she doesn't give a hoot about what he says. As she attempts to leave, Natsuno suddenly calls her from the rooftop, shocking both of them. Natsuno reveals that she had also noticed what Suzuna was up to and orders her to sit on the ground immediately. Natsuno then tells her that she can get out of a slump herself, and as a matter of fact, she has already overcome this one, shocking them. She throws her manuscripts into the air and tells Suzuna that none must fall to the ground, so the idiot starts picking them immediately. Harumi remains surprised, and Natsuno reveals that she was suddenly able to write after she had punished him the day before. Suzuna skims through the pages and instantly becomes so excited that her floodgates almost burst like a fountain. But Natsuno rebukes her for thinking she cannot get out of the slump herself. Natsuno gets excited that she is back, but Harumi says it's all BS if she has a written lust. The next day, while Madoka separates from Natsuno, Natsuno tells her that if she likes the dog, she can think of it as the real Haruman and come whenever she wants to do whatever she wants to it, exciting Madoka. After she leaves, Harumi expresses that he is still quite bothered by the slasher incident, and just then, Suzuna reveals that she ran into the real culprit while she was spreading her rumors, so she clapped his backside mercilessly and folded him up in a garbage can. Hearing this, Natsuno gets pissed, and Suzuna immediately hits the ground, ready to receive her punishment. Some days later, Haruli shops for some books for himself, and while he waits to be attended to, he suddenly becomes hasty, hoping that Yayoi won't arrive when he is still here. However, as he prepares to leave after being attended to, the girl he has been dreading suddenly arrives and tickles him hard again, rendering him useless. The girl says bye and tells him she might be leaving the city too, surprising him, but she uses the advantage to tickle him again. Getting back home, Natsuno accuses him of cheating on her by another girl to touch him and threatens to do him dirty if he thinks of making any move on that girl. But Harube is not having it. Following that, he tells Natsuno that Yayoi told him she will be leaving the city soon and becomes sad that he won't be able to buy books from the store anymore. Natsuno tells him he can just find another bookstore, or at best, order through the mail, but Harumi replies that that's not the case. He can't just switch up like that because there is a deep story between him and the bookstore. He asks her if she wants to hear it, but Natsuno tells him she will pass and tells him to get behind somewhere else to read while she focuses on her writing. Ro's ego is bashed, but he starts to talk about the story anyway to get her interested. However, she screams at him and threatens to shave all his fur. After that, she tells him she will listen to his story and puts away the scissors. Then he begins to recount the story from last spring. He had just entered school, and we decided to visit his new home in his city. He was supposed to meet his apartment manager, and while the man was delayed in coming, he suddenly began to crave books, so he entered the nearby bookstore. Upon entering the bookstore, he became enticed by the collection of books there, and suddenly, he noticed an old Karen complaining about a book she had just read, claiming it was boring as heck, and the whole store should be closed for it. Broston realized it was one of Akiyama Shinobu's books and immediately lost his cool. The cashier tried to convince her, but she kept acting crazy, so Herman Lee took it personally and insulted Ahad for saying the book was a BS bro, went on to give a tirade on how the book is one of the greatest pieces ever written. But the smooth brain soon discovered, after his long speech, that the old woman had left about 20 minutes ago, making him wish he could just disappear. Just then, an old man suddenly attacked with a baseball bat, but he managed to dodge it, and the cashier quickly explained that Harume had saved her from a Karen. The old man, who happened to be the girl's father, immediately went to his knees to apologize and offered that Harume could take any book he wanted as compensation, exciting him. The old man was impressed by his selection, and he gave him even more books for free, plus a point card to use whenever he came around. This was how he began to go to the bookstore. Harumi finally says that the point card he received then keeps a record of the books he has read and is proof of his friendship with the old man. However, as Harumi finishes his story, he realizes that his story is nothing more than a sleeping medicine for Natsuno. The next day, he heads to the store to look into what is going on, but just as he gets there, he meets Yayoi, who leaves the shop angrily and suddenly carries him as she runs off to a park. She sadly complains that her sister doesn't care if the store closes, but she doesn't want that to happen. She then reveals that this is why she came up with a perfect plan to save the store. She brings out a cap advertising the store and says they will wear this around to give the store more publicity, amusing him with how far she is willing to go for the store. However, he is shocked when she suddenly wears him on his head. They start walking around the town to advertise the bookstore, while Haruli feels like entering the ground because this is embarrassing. Some ladies see him, and when they find him cute, they decide to tickle him a bit, which makes him even more embarrassed, as he wishes that no one he knows actually sees him in this state. Meanwhile, Matsuno is currently boiling at home, as she sees him on a blog post online. After the minor publicity for the bookstore, they return to the park, and Yayoi soon begins to cry, which makes Harumi speechless because he can't think of anything to make her feel better. Just then, he suddenly hears the clanking sound of scissors and becomes scared. Natsuno accuses him of cheating and even making a cute girl cry, so she threatens to split him in two. Terrified as always, he asks how she knows where to find him, and she replies that nothing works better than a tracker on a stray dog. Natsuno then turns to Yayoi and encourages her to go home, but the girl replies that she doesn't want to because she thinks her sister must be mad at her due to something she said. However, Natsuno tells her sister must be worried about her and encourages her not to let something like that bother her, relating that she also has an older sister to who she always says mean things. Yayoi asks what if her sister hates her, and Natsuno tells her to apologize to her if that really bothers her. Natsuno follows her back to the store, and Yayoi apologizes for what she did earlier. Her sister hugs her in return, and the issue gets resolved. However, Natsuno suddenly asked about the store, saying one of her acquaintances is a diehard fan who doesn't want it to be closed down. Yayoi's sister, Sakura, is surprised to hear this, and says that the store is never going to close even though their father is a stupid businessman who gives out books more than he sells them. Sakura asks where Natsuno heard that, and she says, from Yayoi. Yayoi immediately explains that she heard mom and dad fighting, so she feared that they would divorce like she often hears on TV, and the store would eventually close down. They are all surprised to find out that this was what happened, and Sakura explains that it wasn't a serious fight, even though their mom beat up their dad while at it. Just then, the old man crashes into the room, obviously excited that his wife is whooping his backside as always. Sakura says that this is how the two Goomers express their love, and she reassures the girl that the store is not closing, making her happy. Some days later, while Harubi reads, Natsuno tells him she is searching for something and needs his help. However, he replies that he will pass since he is still busy reading. Hearing this, she threatens to ensure he has enough time to reach 6 feet underground, scaring him, so he asks her what she is looking for. Natsuno says it's her blanket cups, shocking him because he never expected someone flatter than his own backside to use bras. Natsuno immediately responds with her scissors, making him speechless. She tells him they will be looking immediately then, but Harumi begs that he is not very good at finding lost objects. However, she counters that he is a dog and should be able to use his nose, and the cultured moron jumps toward her plot immediately. But she reflexively knocks him against the wall, asking why the heck he is doing that. Harili replies that he needs her scent to be able to look for a bra, so she agrees to have him stiff her up, even though it is embarrassing. Rose soon begins to do the most by feeling her tiny melons in the process, causing her to knock him against the wall again. She calls him a depraved loser for trying to grope his master's jiggles without consent, but Harumi asks how can he grope what is not there. She responds with her scissors immediately and ties him up after. Seeing this creep who looks like he snorts crack every 2 hours starts wishing she could be tied like that too and punished with a hard rod. Natsuno soon unties Harumi, and Suzuna joins him in looking for a bra. Natsuno tells them it's her favorite, and Suzuna asks what type it is, even though she will rock a rope anytime, any day. Natsuno replies that it has lace and a design, and then she warns Harumi not to stare if he happens to find it first. However, she realizes that Harumi is dipped. She finds him reading in the library and starts to rebuke him. But Harumi decides to stand up for himself. He tells her he's had enough of this and starts speaking his mind, but Natsuno suddenly throws her scissors at him. He quickly dodges it and hits a bookshelf, which causes a box to fall on his head before Natsuno can stop it. Harumi sees a melon pump in the box and sarcastically commends Natsuno for recognizing her weakness and still trying to do something about it, even though she knows her situation is hopeless. He tries walking off, but Natsuno steps on his tail and shows him her scissors, scaring him. Following that, Natsuno goes to check the gym where she exercised the previous day since they could not find the bra at home. And Suzuma teases that she is right to have forgotten it here since she wouldn't have realized she wasn't wearing it anyway. Natsuno gets pissed and suggests Suzuma tests the strength of the locker with her head, which she happily does till she collapses on the floor. Following that, Suzuma suggests that it might have been stolen by an underwear thief, and Natsuno replies that if that's the case, then the thief will pay with his body being flayed. She will then re-sew it inside out, leaving Harumi wondering if she eats with the devil or is just innately wicked. She, however, says it is unlikely that it was stolen since their apartment has tight security. Just then, some gym bros appear, and Natsuno stays back for a melon development routine, while Harumi goes back home to read. As he reads, he suddenly finds Natsuno's bra inside his cover cloth and becomes shocked, wondering how it got here. He soon realizes that he must have mistakenly taken it when looking for something to sleep under the day before. He suddenly remembers the threat she gave to whoever she discovers took it and becomes terrified. Meanwhile, during the melon-sized workout program, Natsuno realizes that the dude is just training her to have chest muscles, not melons. She gets angry and returns home earlier than expected, only to find out the locker containing her underwear has been compromised. At the same time, Harumi has run away from home because he is scared of what Natsuno will do to him if she finds out. Meanwhile, Natsuno starts to look for him and heads to the bookstore he frequents since he has yet to return home since the previous day. Sakura tells her how popular he has become in the community, since everyone finds him cute whenever he goes shopping. Sakura then describes how fluffy he is to carry, but this makes Natsuno jealous because she thinks Harumi must be enjoying her massive balloons, unlike herself, who's got only dots. Natsuno thanked her for her help and left, but as she headed out, Sakura informed her that there had been a lot of traffic accidents in the area lately. She leaves anyway and becomes worried when she can't still find him after searching around. However, she suddenly suspects that she is being followed, but she dismisses it when she doesn't see anyone. Meanwhile, Harumi finds a spot far from home and starts to dig the ground to bury the bra so Natsuno never finds it. However, she suddenly overhears a voice singing and heads there. He soon finds a maid having the best time of her life, singing with a cracked voice. He instantly recognizes that the lines are from a famous award-winning book and starts to sing along. However, he suddenly sneezes, calling the maid's attention and seeing him. She becomes embarrassed and says she will have to isekai him, as no one was supposed to see her like that. She instantly turns her broom into a weapon and starts chasing him, intending to send him to the Shadow Realm. At the same time, Natsuno is running to who knows where when she suddenly hears Harumi's thoughts, screaming for help. Harumi charges toward the road, and she almost hits him, but he manages to jump on the highway. However, as he tries to move away, he suddenly sees the legendary isekai master Recapkun coming for its next victim. He immediately starts to think he is gonna die again without reading all Akiyama Shinobu books, but Natsuno narrowly saves him. She drops him on the ground after and brings out her scissors to fight the ruthless maid. Meanwhile, the maid suddenly hears a roasted potato advert and opts out of the fight. However, she tells Natsuno that she has a feeling they will cross swords someday later, and she leaves. After that, Natsuno sees the bra with Harumi and is excited to have it back because she cherishes the dong design, surprising Harumi. However, she immediately enters her villain mode and threatens to unalive him for taking her bra. Meanwhile, the mysterious dude is still watching her. A few days later, they head to a resort, and getting there, Harumi is shocked to see dangerous weapons searing them. He wonders if the Vikings came to establish a resort business here, but Natsuno tells him to shut up and just enjoy himself. Suddenly, a young lady appears, and Harumi mistakes her for his former landlady. While he wonders why she switched jobs, he realizes she is just a doppelganger. Just then, he discovers the inn has a book section, and as he observes the books they have, Madoka suddenly eats him off the ground and puts him on her melons. He asks what she is doing here, and she reveals that Natsuno invited her over, thanking her. However, Natsuno tells her that she doesn't have to be too formal, because they will become sisters-in-law someday, so they should get to know each other better. Later in the room, Madoka notices a picture frame that Natsuno reveals to be a picture of herself, her sister, and her mother. Harumi, being a man of culture, instantly compares the sizes of the melons and says Natsuno must have taken after her father, annoying Natsuno, who asks him if he would also like to take after his dead grandpa. A few moments later, Madoka notices that there is only one futon in the bedroom and asks Natsuno if she should give another one. But Natsuno tells her no because she thinks it is the best chance to make Harumi go the dog way with her. However, Harumi interprets this as something different instead, thinking Natsuno wants to clap Madoka without a rod. Natsuko gets pissed again and pegs him to the wall with her scissors. Afterward, Natsuno tells Madoka she got a separate room for her and tells her to pack her belongings there. Madoka gets excited and goes to carry Harumi immediately as she heads out. However, Natsuno stops her, saying she doesn't need Harumi in her room. But Madoka claims she does since she has not seen her brother in a while. She tells Natsuno not to come between a brother and a sister, offending her, and they both soon prepare to solve the matter over their fists. Just then, Natsuno's alarm rings, and she suggests that she and Madoka use the hot spring, which she immediately agrees to, shocking Harumi, because the two idiots were just about fighting. Following this, while Natsuno, Sakura, and Madoka bathe in the hot spring, Sakura sees a shy girl named Ami hiding and asks her to join them. Ami becomes embarrassed, but Natsuno suddenly notices her jiggling bouncies, making her jealous because even without clothes on, anyone would still struggle to see her melons. In her embarrassment, she starts to think about the poor little dog and becomes curious about what he is doing. They return to the room later and find him reading. They later head to the dining hall for dinner, only to find some dudes tied up like your mom on Friday nights. It turns out one of them is Suzuna, surprising her, but she rebukes her for intruding again and tells her to get her useless face away from the inn. Meanwhile, the creepy stalker is still watching without Natsuno knowing. The next day, they hit the streets, and as they walk, Harumi notices that Natsuno is engrossed in a book. He asks her about it, demanding that she also let him in, but she refuses. Natsuno visits a bookstore and meets the mischievous maid again, surprising the maid who never expected them to meet again this soon. As they get ready to settle their unfinished business, Natsuno notices a whetstone nearby and asks her if it is hers. She replies yes and says the brand produces the finest products, intriguing Natsuno, who tells Harumi after the maid leaves that she will also buy her own top-class whetstone to sharpen her weapons. Meanwhile, back at the inn, Madoka finds it difficult to cook even though she had stayed behind, because she wants to make delicacies born out of love for Harumi, and she wishes she had her two-minute eater with her. Natsuno gets her whetstone and promises to put her scissors back in their finest state, but Harumi ain't tripping for this because he has just wasted all this day. They soon return to the inn, and Natsuno heads to the offspring immediately to sharpen her scissors. While at it, this depraved maniac is busy seeking how to cause herself pain to enjoy the pleasure that comes with it. Maxie enters just then and immediately jumps into the hot spring, challenging Suzuna to an endurance test. Whoever stays longer in the water wins. Meanwhile, in a different part of the inn, Harumi suddenly sees some dudes who seem to have respawned right out of the moron apocalypse, marching with weapons toward the bathhouse. He runs to inform Natsuno immediately, but it is too late. They break into the bathhouse, and upon seeing them, Natsuno gets into her fighting stance immediately, saying she has witnessed the same thing back in their town before. She says it all started when she noticed a stalker spying on her, but she fought the attackers all alone then, so she can take them on now. Meanwhile, Maxie thinks she's got the aura of the Demon Queen and walks toward them to stop her, but the group of zombified morons just walk past her, putting her in a lifetime of aura debt instantly. They suddenly attack Natsuno, but she holds them off with her scissors. However, she wishes her scissors were in the best condition. Seeing this, Harumi decides to buy her some time so she can finish sharpening her iron and immediately dashes toward the attackers to blast them off. He starts hitting the zombies with the bath bowls while Natsuno almost gets tamed, seeing how he is standing up for her. One of the zombies would have sent Harumi to Nirvana, but Madoka suddenly intervenes with her chainsaw. Natsuno soon joins too, and as they start to fight off the enemies, Natsuno's precious little book drops to the ground, leading to a stampede that ruins the book. She goes into Hulk mode immediately. The next day, the innkeeper of the inn apologizes for all the ruckus the previous day, along with the morons who now claim that they can't remember what happened. Natsuno and the others bade the inn goodbye, and while Harumi complains that they could barely rest even at the inn, Natsuno assures him that next time it will just be two of them alone, using the dawn clapping technique. Some days later, Natsuno and Harumi go to the bookstore to buy some books, and while Sakura attends to them, Harumi asks Natsuno about her stalker. She replies that she has been attacked several times since the last time but brags that she fought them all anyway. Harumi states that this is not just a mere case of a stalker anymore, and just then, Natsuno notices the amateur stalker passing. Meanwhile, Sakura informs her that the book she once recommended to her has now come in. She gives it to her, and seeing it, Harumi recognizes it immediately because he saw it at the hot springs the other day, but he didn't get to read it. He then says that even though he doesn't know the author, it must be a good book since Sakura recommends it. Afterward, they head home, and upon getting into the apartment, Harumi pulls a Sherlock Holmes and instantly notices that someone has ransacked the apartment. However, the dumb idiot beside her doesn't realize. Harumi is shocked by her low IQ and tells her that there were 99,822 books before they left. Now, the books are 99,823, which means an extra book has been added. Natsuno is surprised how he knows that, and dude, feeling like a genius for a moment, starts to teach her smartness 1 to 01. She asks him if he can locate the extra book, and he heads to the shelves immediately to bring the same book they just got from Sakura, shotting them. The two start to doubt each other's last memory capability, wondering if the other has forgotten they bought it before. They suspect it must be the stalker, but Natsuno is confused about how he got in since the alarm should have gone off if there was a break-in. She soon notices Harumi reading the book and asks the book addict why the heck he is reading that at such a time, but Pro defends that it's their only lead, so they have to start by reading it. Natsuno thinks this is bright and decides to read it too. Meanwhile, Sakura gladly tells Ami she recommended her book to Natsuno, surprising her. After completing the book, he starts giving his reviews, thinking he still has a long way to go when it comes to books, but he suddenly notices Natsuno engrossed in the book too. At that moment, his heart starts to pound as he looks at her, wishing he could pound her cake. He loses control and jumps at her melons, but Natsuno coincidentally makes a three-pointer of the trash can. Afterward, Harumi asks what she thinks about the book, and she replies that the book is too well written for an amateur, suspecting that an established author must have changed her writing style and written it. Harumi adds that he also noticed the book felt so similar to Akiyama Shinobu's books, and Natsuno confirms that, saying she allegedly thought she was the one who wrote it. Harumi thinks about this for a moment and wonders who the book's author really is. They search for her name on Kubla, or what the heck is that, and realize that the author is also masking her identity like Akiyama Shinobu. Natsuno calls Suzuna over immediately and asks her to tell her everything she knows about the amateur author, Uzumaki Otaru. But Suzuna refuses. However, she agrees when Natsuno promises to cut her for every piece of information she reveals, making her excited. A few moments later, Suzuna lies on the ground in an OG position for back thrusts while Natsuno and Harumi discuss the information they just got. They realize the author is the daughter of the tiger of historical novels, Shuzan. Afterward, Natsuno suggests they go look for her, and they set out immediately. On their way, they pass a neighborhood Harumi finds familiar, and he begins to recount when he once came to buy Akiyama Shinobu's books, even though he had exams. Natsuno tells him he should focus on his exams, but he replies that her books are more important than tests, raising her up. However, she becomes angry when she interprets it to mean that he only likes her books, not her. Meanwhile, the stalker is still watching them like an unemployed fool. Harumi takes Natsuno through a deserted building, and as it walks through, Natsuno suddenly notices that they are surrounded. A similar occurrence to the hot springs happens again as some clueless Joshnos start to approach them like puppets, and in a quick response, Natsuno picks up Harumi and pitches him like a baseball pitch at them. Bro is knocked out cold and wakes up later to see that Natsuno has whooped their backsides. Just then, the stalker walks in, and it turns out to be none other than Shuzan, and he has been behind the incidents, shocking Harumi. Shuzan commends Natsuno for refining skills and relates it to the reason her books are wild, but Natsuno ain't ready for no talks. She ties him up faster than your ex moved on and asks him why he did all of this. Shuzan tries to act like he is a mafia boss, but he soon breaks character, begging her to let him down or he might wet himself because he is getting old and his sausage is near expiring. However, Natsuno doesn't give a flip and hits him, asking him how he managed to enter her apartment despite the security measures in place. Shuzan reveals that due to his connections, he had the owner of the security company turn off her alarm and unlock the door, shocking Harumi because he expected something mind-blowing. Natsuno asks why the security company would do that, and he replies that the president is his childhood friend. Ever since he covered the fact that he'd pooed on his body back in school, he has done everything Shuzan asked of him. Interrogating further, Natsuno asks him why he did all of that, to which he replies that it's because his daughter wanted Akiyama Shinobu to have her books so badly. This prompts Natsuno to ask why he didn't just mail it to her, but instead hid it where she wouldn't have found it. Shuzan replies that he didn't want her to have the book, even though his daughter wanted him to give it to her, because Natsuno would be a bad influence on her. The old idiot starts to rant like a Ken and tells her that her bad attitude is what is attracting those mobs. Natsuno cuts the rope hanging him immediately, realizing he is not the one responsible for the mob attacks. She claims that Uzumaki is responsible instead, but Shuzan objects to that and confesses that he did everything. She pauses for a moment and then asks what his daughter wants. He tells her she wants to meet her. They get the address, which turns out to be Harumi's previous school. Upon getting there, they split up to search for the girl. Harumi heads to the library and takes out some books to reveal a document he once kept there. While at it, Ami suddenly appears and asks if he is Harumi, shocking him. Harumi recognizes Ami's surname as Osala and realizes she is the author they have been searching for. Curious about how she knows who he is, he barks in question. Ami explains that Sakura once told her about a dog that frequently came to buy books, and she instinctively knew it had to be him. However, she never fully believed it until she saw him retrieve the manuscript from its hiding spot. She expresses relief that he is alive and proudly states that she has fulfilled her promise of becoming an author. However, she apologizes for failing to complete the manuscript as she had once found. Ami reveals that her father's support helped her become an author, but ever since Harumi's death, she has been unable to write anything new. She confesses that this makes her feel like she isn't a real author. The only way to prove herself, she claims, is by surpassing a true author. Hence, she invited Natsuno. Meanwhile, inside Harumi's former classroom, Natsuno hears Ami's voice through the speakers, summoning her to the rooftop. On the rooftop, Natsuno blares at Harumi with an intense expression, accusing him of being a two-timing traitor. She appears ready to attack, but Ami intervenes, insisting that authors do not settle matters through violence. Instead, she proposes a writing contest. They relocate to the library, where they should face to face, and Ami sets the rules. The first to complete a short story spanning 100 manuscript pages will be the victor. At Harumi's bark, the contest begins. As they write, Ami notices Natsuno's speed, quickly realizing she is falling behind. Desperate, she attempts various distractions, but none shake Natsuno's focus. Accepting her disadvantage, she instead asks what Natsuno thinks of her novel. Natsuno responds that it is a good book. Ami then presses a button, triggering a mechanism that reveals mirrors hidden behind the bookshelves. As soon as Natsuno catches a reflection, she instinctively reaches for her scissors and nearly stabs herself. She struggles against the impulse, fighting for control. Watching her reaction, Ami explains that she embedded specific keywords throughout her book, implanting a subconscious command in readers' minds. The message tells them that their enemy is a red-eyed, black-haired girl wielding scissors, and that they must eliminate her. At that moment, Harumi realizes why he had instinctively leaped at Natsuno after reading the book, as well as why so many others had attacked her before. Ami declares that she will fulfill her promise by defeating Natsuno, but Natsuno fights back against the mind control. She clenches her pen in her mouth and continues writing, defying Ami's manipulation. Her sheer determination allows her to win the contest. Afterward, Ami congratulates her and attempts to end it all with her pen, but Harumi swiftly takes it away. He fetches the manuscript and places it in front of her. Confused, Ami hesitates, so Natsuno clarifies. Harumi wants her to write. Natsuno then reveals that Ami's father never used his influence to secure her the new author award. She wanted with her own talent. Still, Ami doubts herself, insisting she isn't a real author. Natsuno responds firmly, stating that as long as Ami has the desire to write, and there are people willing to read her books, she is an author. Moved by these words, Ami turns to Harumi and asks if he would read her books if she publishes them. In response, he barks. Natsuno kneels before her and expresses genuine interest in reading her manuscript once it is complete. Surprised by her kindness, Ami asks if Natsuno is not angry at her for everything she has done. Natsuno reassures her that she has already let it go. Overwhelmed with emotion, Ami bursts into tears, thanking her sincerely. She then respectfully refers to Natsuno as Tensei, but Natsuno corrects her, telling her to call her senpai instead. A few days later, Madoka tells Natsuno she wants to make curry to thank her for letting her crash while she prepped for the school entrance exams. She gets busy in the kitchen, slicing and dicing away with her shining knife like a villain in a slasher movie. Curious and slightly terrified, Harumi sneaks in to check on her, only to see her hacking away like she's preparing an offering for the underworld. Memories of her past Kree disasters flood his mind, each one worse than the last. But then, something strange happens. The smell isn't deadly this time, and it feels like something he can eat. Hope fills his tiny furry heart as he scurries up to peek into the pot. But the moment he sees the contents, his soul nearly leaves his body, because the curry is bright blue. Before he can scream, Natsuno reminds him of the blood oath he unknowingly made to eat it. Realizing he values his life, he bolts to the bookstore to escape his culinary fate. Just as he's catching his breath, Maxi's goons storm into the shop like they'd own the place and buy out every book written by Akiyama Shinobu and Himheidi Momonji. Suspicious, Harumi decides to follow them, but immediately gets sidetracked when he spots his landlady and the innkeeper walking by, which leaves him wondering how they are not the same person. His mind spirals down a rabbit hole until he somehow ends up wandering into a park. That's when disaster strikes. The psycho broom-wielding maid, Morita Sachi, is there, humming another creepy tune like she's rehearsing for a horror movie. He tries to slip away, but his dumb luck makes him step on a stick, alerting her. She turns, eyes locking onto them like a predator spotting prey. Flustered but still deadly, she launches an attack. But this time, Harumi is ready. He dodges all her attacks like a Jackie Chan Isai-Paul. However, she's relentless and eventually corners him. Just as she's about to deliver the final blow to dispatch into the underworld, Natsuno appears out of nowhere, blocking the strike. The air thickens with tension as the two stare each other down. Sachi steps back dramatically and reveals that she's a former agent with the codename Shadow Servant. She declares that Natsuno should not underestimate her, and just as things are about to get explosive, a loud whirring noise fills the air. A helicopter descends from the heavens and Maxie appears. With the grace of a villain in a budget soap opera, she announces that she bought all of Natsuno and Momonji's books because she was personally offended by being compared to them. She gestures dramatically to a covered structure nearby, and as her bodyguards unveil it, Natsuno is shot. She recognizes it immediately as the legendary 9-story tower. Maxie perches at the top, striking a pose like she's in a fashion magazine, and challenges Natsuno and Momonji to a writing contest. But before anyone can process the madness, Sachi charges forward, effortlessly crashing Maxie's bodyguards and shredding their clothes to confetti. She glares up at Maxie, declaring that she won't let an airheaded wannabe disrespect her mistress. Not one to back down, Natsuno joins them at the top of the tower, ready to throw hands. But just as the epic showdown is about to begin, Maxie's bodyguard comes to drag her away again, embarrassing her. A few days later, Suzuna rolls up to see Natsuno, but the author princess acts like she's invisible. While Natsuno is busy grinding at her desk, Harumi, being the nosy pup he is, asks Suzuna why she's even here. She explains that she wants Natsuno to go public with her identity. Thinking of doing interviews and flexing on TV like other big-shot authors might actually pressure her into finishing the final book of the Deadly Sin series. Without waiting for a response, Suzuna whips out the costumes she brought, and using her reality-defying editing skills, she somehow gets Natsuno to wear them without realizing it. She cycles through outfit after outfit, making Natsuno the unknowing victim of a bizarre fashion show. Just when she tries to sneak a swimsuit on her, Natsuno finally catches on. She then serves Suzuna a righteous punishment before getting back to work like nothing happened. Unfazed, Suzuna unveils her next master plan, which is to get Natsuno drunk to see if she'll turn into a lovable cinnamon roll or a full-on demon queen. Harumi warns that there's no way she'd fall for it, but Suzuna pulls another sneaky maneuver, slipping wine into Natsuno's mug at the speed of the flash. The two watch like scientists observing a test subject as Natsuno sips, and almost immediately she rises from her chair and approaches Harumi. Harumi panics, racing for impact, but instead of punishing him, she licks him up and starts acting really nice. Suzuna, expecting chaos, is deeply disappointed by this unwanted kindness. When she tries talking to Natsuno, she also speaks sweetly to her, which disgusts Suzuna because she prefers getting verbally obliterated. Desperate to fix this, she encourages Natsuno to drink more, hoping it'll push her to villain mode. Instead, Natsuno only grows softer, suddenly declaring her love for Suzuna. This declaration sends Suzuna spiraling into an existential crisis, and she collapses dramatically like a wilted flower. Meanwhile, Natsuno picks up Harumi again, who is beyond uncomfortable with this personality shift. When he blurts out that her modest assets are jabbing into his sides, she takes it the wrong way, becoming ultra-sensitive. Harumi, fearing for his life, tries to backpedal by saying that everyone except AniSkull viewers loves it flat. Unfortunately, this only sends Natsuno into delusion mode, and she starts imagining their wedding, their honeymoon, and even discussing baby room colors like it's already set in stone. Harumi is absolutely horrified, but before he can escape this nightmare, she drags into the bedroom with clear intentions to take things to the next level. Just as the creep pins him down to taste his sausage, her stomach flips, and she vomits all over him, effectively ending the madness. Sometime later, after she has snapped out of it, she tells him he reeks like an anime convention, which makes Harumi blurt in return that she is the cause. She tells him to leave the apartment for a month, and he replies that he kinda prefers the soft Natsuno earlier. However, to his complete shock, she actually yanks him up and offers to give him a bath. Following that, Natsuno finally gives Harumi a work in progress of the final part of the Deadly Sin series, which he has been crying for, and asks him what he thinks, but Pro isn't satisfied and complains that the plot summary was way too long, annoying her, so she starts chasing him again with her scissors.
Watch this next video. Till next time, my fellow legendary plot masters.